Day. The scream never made it out of her throat. Mia Calloway pressed both palms flat against the cold glass of the front door and watched his taillights disappear around the corner. Gone, just like that. Her boss had locked her inside the store. On purpose. And he didn't even look back. No phone signal. No landline she could find. No way out. Just the hum of the refrigeration units in aisle 4, the distant sound of traffic she couldn't reach, and the slow creeping realization that nobody knew where she was. She had no idea that less than a block away, a man in a Navy uniform was walking back to his truck with his military K9 partner at his side, and that dog had just stopped dead in his tracks. Hey everyone, I'm Amber, and today I want to tell you the story of Mia Calloway, a 22-year-old just trying to get through another Thursday night shift at a small hardware store in Macon, Georgia. What her manager did to her that evening was something no employee, no person, should ever have to experience. But what happened in the hour that followed? That part is something else entirely. Mia had been working at Hartley's Home and Hardware for about 10 months. It wasn't her dream job. It wasn't anybody's dream job. But the pay was steady enough, the commute was short, and she liked the older regulars who came in every Saturday morning asking about the same drill bits they'd been buying for 20 years. She liked the routine. She liked feeling useful. Her manager, Dale Pruitt, was 52 years old and had been running that store for nearly a decade. Most of the time he seemed fine, cordial, the kind of guy who kept a candy dish on his desk and remembered your birthday. But Mia had started noticing things in the last few months. Small things at first. The way he lingered when she was closing up alone. The way his mood shifted whenever she talked to the mail delivery drivers. The way he'd schedule her for extra shifts and then dock her pay in ways that didn't quite add up. She kept a notebook. Not because she wanted to cause trouble, but because something in her gut told her she needed to. And then, about 3 weeks before that Thursday, she made the mistake of asking him about it directly. One quiet afternoon, just the two of them, she pulled out her phone and showed him the discrepancies she'd tracked. 15 minutes short here, half an hour missing there. A full Sunday shift that never appeared on her paycheck. Dale Pruitt looked at her phone, then he looked at her. He smiled, said he'd look into it, and walked away. That was the last normal day between them. After that, something shifted. He stopped making small talk. He started assigning her to the back stockroom more often, away from customers, away from the front windows. When she asked questions, he gave short answers and turned away. She couldn't prove anything was wrong, but she could feel it the way you feel a storm before the sky even changes color. Then came that Thursday. But before we go any further, if you've ever been in a job where something just felt off, where you couldn't put your finger on it but you knew something wasn't right, drop a comment below. And if you're new here, go ahead and hit subscribe because what happens in the next part of this story is something I don't want you to miss. That evening, Dale called Mia into the back just before 8 p.m. He told her the inventory for the fastener aisle needed to be finished before she left. He said it casually, like it was nothing. She nodded, grabbed the clipboard, and got to work. The fastener aisle was long and narrow, tucked deep into the store, far from the entrance. She had her earbuds in. She was focused. She didn't hear him moving toward the front. She didn't hear the lights clicking off, one bank at a time. She definitely didn't hear the deadbolt. When she finally finished the last shelf and walked toward the front to clock out, she stepped into near total darkness. The overhead fluorescents were all off. The only light came from the glow of the exit sign above the door and the faint amber wash of the parking lot lights filtering through the security bars on the windows. Her first thought was that the power had gone out. Her second thought, the one that hit her like cold water, was that Dale's car was gone from the lot. She reached the front door, locked. She tried the side entrance, locked and bolted. She moved to the back, the emergency exit she'd used 100 times, and the handle gave a weak, useless rattle. She'd noticed it was stiff last month. She'd mentioned it twice. Nobody had fixed it. Tonight it didn't budge at all. She pulled out her phone. No signal. She moved to every corner of the store, holding it up, turning it sideways, checking and rechecking. Nothing. Not a single bar. She tried Wi-Fi. There was a router in the back office. But the office was locked. She stood in the middle of that dark hardware store and let herself think the thought she'd been avoiding. This wasn't an accident. She thought about Dale's face when she'd shown him those missing hours. She thought about the way he'd watched her lately. She thought about the fact that she'd told no one her schedule for tonight, that her mom thought she'd be home by 9, and that If she didn't show, it might be hours before anyone even started asking questions. Her hands started to shake. She moved through the store methodically now, pushing through the fear. She checked every phone she could find, but the office lines all ran through the locked back room. She looked at the windows, thick steel bars bolted into the brick. She tried yelling anyway, long and hard, but the street outside was quiet and the store's insulated walls swamped the sound. That's when she made a decision. If she couldn't get out and she couldn't be heard, she needed to make something happen from the inside. She started looking for anything she could use to make noise. And that's when she saw it. A tall metal display rack near the front window. One of those old freestanding shelves packed with hanging merchandise. If something like that went over, it wouldn't just be loud. It would be the kind of sound that carried. She gave it one hard push. It tipped. And then it fell. The crash was enormous. A wall of sound that rang through the whole store, metal on tile, merchandise scattering across the floor in every direction. The security bars on the front windows rattled. For 1 second, everything vibrated. Outside, on the other side of the street, Master Sergeant Cole Ashby had just stepped off the curb. Cole had finished a late dinner at a small diner 2 blocks over and was making his way back to his pickup truck, his Belgian Malinois, Ranger, moving in tight formation at his left side. Ranger was 7 years old and had spent 4 of those years in active service overseas. He didn't startle at ordinary sounds. Car backfires, street noise, kids playing, none of it registered. Cole had learned to pay attention to what made Ranger actually stop, and Ranger had stopped. The big dog's ears came forward. His body went completely still. He turned his head toward the dark storefront across the street, and he made a single low sound. Not a bark, more like a signal, something precise and deliberate. The sound he made when something needed checking. Cole crossed the street. He approached the front window and pressed both hands against the glass, shading his eyes to see past the glare of the parking lot lights. Mia was there, standing in the middle of the floor with her arms raised over her head, waving in wide, desperate arcs. Her face, even through the glass, was unmistakable. She wasn't confused. She wasn't hurt, not yet. She was terrified and she was asking for help. Cole didn't waste a second. He pulled out his phone and called 911, giving the address, the situation, and the specific concern: potential unlawful imprisonment, possible domestic or employer-related incident. He stayed on the line. He didn't leave the window. He pressed one hand flat against the glass so she could see him, so she knew he was there, so she had something to hold on to while they waited. Mia, on the other side of that glass, felt her knees go weak. She pressed her own hand against his, glass between them, and for the first time in the last 40 minutes, she felt something other than fear. She felt like she might actually be okay. 2 patrol cars arrived within 7 minutes. One officer went around back to check the emergency exit. The other used the non-destructive override protocol for the front lock. When the deadbolt finally pulled back and the door swung open, Mia walked out into the warm Georgia night and sat down on the curb and didn't say anything for a long moment. Cole sat down next to her. Ranger pressed his large, solid head against her arm. She cried. She cried the way you cry when you've been holding your breath for an hour, and you finally, get to breathe again. The officers took her statement. She told them everything, including the missing pay, the behavior changes, the fact that she'd been the only employee on site when it happened. She showed them the notes on her phone, the dates, the amounts. She'd kept that notebook, and it turned out to matter. Dale Pruitt was located at his home at 10:40 that night. He claimed it was an accident. Said he thought Mia had already left. Said he simply forgot to check. Officers asked him why he hadn't responded to any of the 3 calls Mia had attempted before her battery died. He didn't have an answer for that. He was charged with unlawful imprisonment. A subsequent investigation into his payroll records confirmed what Mia had suspected: systematic wage theft, small deductions that had been made to the pay of multiple employees over more than 2 years. That investigation widened. The charges did too. Mia Calloway never went back to Hartley's Home and Hardware. She didn't have to. Within a week of the story spreading through her community, she had 3 job offers. She took a position at a property management company downtown. Better hours, better pay. A manager who actually answered calls. She still keeps notes. She says she always will. Cole Ashby returned to base 2 days later. He said in a later interview that he almost hadn't stopped, that he'd been tired that night and almost just kept walking. But Ranger had heard something, and Cole had learned a long time ago, in places far more dangerous than a Georgia street, that when Ranger stopped, you stopped. The reason Mia got out of that store wasn't luck. It was noise. She made noise when she had no other option. She stopped waiting for someone to notice and started making it impossible not to. That falling shelf wasn't a panic response. It was a decision, and sometimes that's all it takes. One decision to stop being quiet. One decision to make yourself seen, even from behind a locked door. There will be times in your life when you feel trapped, not always in a building, sometimes in a situation, a relationship, a job that is slowly taking pieces of you. And there will be a voice that tells you to stay calm, stay quiet, don't make a scene, don't cause trouble. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is ignore that voice entirely. Sometimes the bravest and the smartest thing you can do is make some noise. If this story stayed with you, I want to know, have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between staying quiet and speaking up? What did you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're new here, subscribe. I share stories like this every week. Stories about real people, real moments, real decisions that changed everything. Take care of yourselves and look out for each other.